wanted to come on here today and give some transparency about where I sit in the market. Oftentimes I try to be informative on these videos, but a big goal and why I started creating these YouTube videos was to also be transparent about what I'm doing and how I feel. So that's what I want this video to be catered towards. So I'll be talking about some of my positions as well as how I feel about the current market. It's been a while since I've made a video, so I wanted to take a second to actually hop on here and do just that. But before I get into it, please hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe button and comment down below if you guys enjoy. And that being said, let's get right into it. So for starters, I want to talk about HIMS. As many of you guys may know, HIMS is my biggest position, and there's been a lot of noise surrounding the company, although it's quieted down quite a bit. It does not have much volume in the stock because of the old news that came out about Novo discontinuing their partnership and there being risk of a lawsuit there. And I wanted to kind of just talk about how I don't really think the lawsuit is probable anymore. At this point, I feel like the lawsuit should have hit if it was going to hit, and I think Novo at this point has weighed the pros and cons of a potential lawsuit, and they don't want to put any of their patents at risk, and that being one reason. Two, the time and the hangover on a company that's already been struggling as far as like its stock as well as even the business. I don't think that's another thing they want to add on to pressure the company. So they're looking at alternative routes, like we've seen them partnering with Weight Watchers, and you can say what you want about that, but they're trying to find other routes to bring demand to the name brand GLP-1 that they're selling, and they don't want to do business with people who might bring traction to the drug, but will continue to compound and steal market share. So I think that's going to be, and I mean, none of this is guaranteed and none of it's financial advice, but I kind of have a feeling they're just going to continue trying to do business and focus on maybe even finding a new CEO. And that, I guess, would be really where I could see maybe the tide shift and where maybe the new CEO wants to um, take a legal hit at HIMS. But I severely even doubt that because the board already knows what it wants and the board is currently running the show. And if they're not suing, I don't think they're going to appoint a CEO who will sue. But maybe they do want to wait until they have a face on the company before taking legal action against HIMS. So, with that being said, I do think that them taking legal action is very small, but it is still possible and it's still on the table, and I think that's why we see the stock being weighed down right now. But part of the reason I feel comfortable, continuing to add at these levels is we've already took a 30% dip off the idea that HIMS would be getting sued, and so if they don't, the stock should be much higher, and if they do, I feel as if we only have so much more to fall. So that is one of the reasons that I'm still willing to put capital in here because it's looking very probable that they won't get sued, and if they do, we've already taken a big hit for it. So adding at these levels is not bad, and I'm still sitting on quite a bit of cash, but I'll get to that at the end of the video. So the next position I want to talk a little bit more. Oh, I actually want to go back real quick. And another reason why I stay bullish on HIMS is because I feel like a lot of people forget Andrew Dudum did an interview and he was talking about how a lot of people got Netflix wrong because they were so focused on that blockbuster movie that they forced through the theaters instead of streaming it on Netflix where the consumer enjoyed watching their movies. They stayed stubborn and stayed the traditional way and they continued to force it through the blockbuster theaters, to put the blockbuster movie through the theaters, and then people ignored that there is a Netflix though, and eventually it would catch on. And that's kind of what this is GLP-1s are the blockbuster weight losing drug, and people are so caught up on how people don't want to partner with HIMS to put that on their platform, but what they're ignoring is there is a HIMS and there is a platform people like going to for this drug and for other products as well. And that's what's going to happen is, maybe they don't get this blockbuster movie, or at least not now, but there will be other blockbusters to come, and it just takes one, and then it's going to all, create the flywheel for HIMS, and, they're creating the flywheel with their own products, and they continue to compound, and they continue to decide it's worth the risk. And the main story here is people are all caught up in the GLP-1 noise, but we got to remember that HIMS is way more than a GLP-1 company, and whether there's a lawsuit or not, it will weigh down the stock, but that doesn't mean HIMS isn't going to grow out of that. So I think that's one thing to note, because when the lawsuit noise was getting really up there, a lot of talk was about like HIMS is going to get sued on the ground, they're going to be finished, they're going to have nothing left. And I think it is important to note that they're working in a gray area. The probability of, if there was a lawsuit, most likely they get slapped on the wrist, they no longer can compound, and they have to move on with the business. But it's important to note, there's way more than just compounding semaglutide to their business, and that's what I wanted to say. Now, going on to the next category, I want to talk about SoFi. So as far as SoFi, I really just want to talk about the stock price action. It's been incredible lately. They're up to $20. I started buying like a year and a half ago probably now. It was like around December. I started adding in the 8s, and then I started buying the 7s, and then it fell into the 6s, and I started buying the 6s some more. And I had an average price of about $7.40. I ended up selling it at $13 last October because HIMS fell on the Amazon news, and I bought that at 20 bucks instead. And I swung trade that over, and now I do still have a position in SoFi, in which it just hit 20 bucks, and it's just a crazy ride to see because of what this company's been through and all the weight that's been holding down the stock, and everybody's slandering the company because Anthony Noto simply is just not a outspoken CEO who announces every single thing the company does. They just silently keep executing. And I just wanted to, praise all the SoFi shareholders who were able to hold through that, because I know it would have been hard to chase these other companies in the meantime. But if you have been buying since then, you've now watched your position turn into a 3x in about a year and a half, and the company's momentum still going. You got crypto coming, as well as loan refinancing, as we're seeing that some of this loan forgiveness might not be coming that we were expecting, and that's going to open up the flywheel for way more loans coming for people who might have student loans who might not be able to pay them now, and they need to get refinanced, as well as rates getting ready to come down. That's going to also create this refinance boom. So it's a very exciting time to be in SoFi as these rates come down, crypto's heating up. It makes total sense that SoFi's been flying with all the tailwinds it has, and I couldn't be more excited as a shareholder. And lastly, I want to talk about the current state of the economy, and I apologize for my noisy chair. I need to get a new one. But I want to talk about the current state of the economy, because I've mentioned in the past my concern is unemployment, and I want to just say my concern still sits with unemployment. We see Donald Trump talking about tariffs again, and as much as I'm not that big of a believer that it's going to cause the biggest inflation with how much drilling we're doing, I think we'll see enough disinflation in other places. I worry this gives Jerome Powell another excuse to not cut rates right now. And as a college student, I've seen firsthand that I have a ton of college friends. I just graduated pretty much, and I know a bunch of people graduating, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. As I still live in campus, I'm talking, I'm socializing, and it just nobody's able to find a job. And then you have reports coming out saying how AI is taking beginner white collar jobs. They don't so the beginner jobs to get into the workforce are getting taken up by AI. So then you need experience pretty much already, work experience that a college student can't really obtain unless if they worked an internship maybe 3 years ago from now that, propels their career. And then on top of that, you have an economy where we've tightened interest rates to make it hard to get a job because we need inflation to come down. And between those two factors, I think that unemployment could break. I could see us having a spike, and that's what's been fearing me, and that's why I currently sit on a decent amount of cash, although I bought a decent more of HIMS today, but I'm still sitting on about 3 point something K on a 22K portfolio. So I am still a decent position in cash, but I'm definitely not close to all cash because I would hate to miss out on this wave. And I think we still have time before, it completely falls apart. I think there's going to be more hints, and but it's going to move fast. And once I start seeing the cracks really start breaking, that's when I'm going to worry, and that's when I'm going to have to make sure I'm keeping my hands on capital. I'm not a big big advocate for trying to time the market. I think that's a losing game because ultimately the market does continue to go up. But I am an advocate for when you see some damage in the market, don't chase these stocks that are at these all-time high premiums. You know, get the cash, wait for the big dip because there's always the big dip when the big data comes out, and usually you hit the bottom pretty quick and you level off. So I just want to make sure I have a lot of cash when we take that big dip and the economy levels off. And this is not me guaranteeing a recession. This is not me saying that we're going to have a recession, but this is just my concern with the economy is the unemployment, and I'm just keeping a close eye on that, and I've said that in other videos as well. So I wanted to come on here and say that I do think it's time to start cutting rates, and I think if we start cutting rates, we could be okay. But I'd like to see a rate cut in July, and from the sounds of what Jerome Powell has said, it doesn't seem like we're going to get that rate cut, and I worry about what could happen in the next month because I want to say maybe there's a Fed meeting in August, but if not, then September. You know, how is the economy going to look in a month or a month and a half by that next decision? It's a long wait, and with what the percentage of the odds are right now, it's that we're not going to cut now. So you're going to keep on pushing it off, keep waiting, and we're just going to have to see what happens and continue to keep an eye on the data. So that's what I'll be doing. So if you guys made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to also ask you guys one last time, hit that thumbs up button and the subscribe button if you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.